All right, let's see. Can we hear me? Yes. Okay. My name is Mike Anderley, and one of the things that I'm kind of known for at the moment is upsetting a lot of people who believe that it takes years and years and years to make money with your books on Amazon. And so what happened is back in the kind of the title of this talk is Hacking the Process to Your Success. And I want to kind of talk about that in the reverse order. I want to talk about success, I want to talk about process, and then I want to talk about hacking specifically. And the reason that I look at it that way is because every person's definition of success is a little bit different. My version of success was that I wanted to create a compelling series that people wanted to go back and revisit over and over again and read it because the characters were friends and I wanted to make money. So those were the two criteria for my personal success. I've had conversations with individuals who are very literary minded. And their version of success is different. Or I've talked to some people who want their books in bookstores. Their version of success is different. So whatever your personal view of success is, that's what you should be working on, not necessarily mine. But perhaps my method of going down and hacking it is something that will be beneficial to you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right, so let's talk about the process part. My background is in sales and marketing. Digital sales and marketing and technology. Those are the core things that I've been doing for the last 15 years. And in that realm, that arena, there's something called a minimally viable product. And by definition, minimally viable doesn't mean it's crap. It just means that it's going to give someone the minimum amount of productivity that they find useful so that you can find out if anyone likes it and would pay money for it. And that paying money is a very important part. So it's that process that you go from point A to getting a product out and then doing it again and making it better. And then that is coming back from my technology background. And so that is one of the things I looked at just as an understanding when I set out on this path 9 months ago. I put out my first book November 3rd, 2015. I put my next book out November 12th, 11th, 12th. My third one November 23rd. December 15, January 5th, and I've done a book a month ever since. Now what that allows me to do is look from my history and say, okay, instead of taking 5 years, I can see kind of what happens to someone working, 4 books in 3 years. I compressed it a lot. And there were some benefits to that. And I'll actually talk why I decided to do that, because one of the things that people have, that I've mentioned is I had no idea who kBoards was. When I put out my first book, I didn't have a clue, except for the fact that I knew that I could put something out and put it up on Amazon because I already had some PDFs as sales documents supporting my consulting business. So I knew that much. I knew that one of my sons was a good writer, but he wouldn't do anything. So I was like, you know what? I have a bucket list idea. I want to be able to at least put out a book because I'm a reader. I'm what I personally call a whale reader. I read 50 books a year or more, unless I'm writing, which I found out now I do like 5 books a year. But it's kind of gone down just a little. So then we looking at it at the term, and I'm kind of talking about it right now, a little bit called hacking. And what that means to me means that as I look at each stage in the process, I look to see, is there a way I can do it a little faster? Is there a way that I can do it a little bit, out the bounds of the normal box? And remember, I didn't know what the box was when I started. So it wasn't that I necessarily broke any rules because I'm like, hey, I'm an outlaw. It was, hey, I didn't know there was a rule I was supposed to be following in the first place. So I just did what I thought I needed to do as a reader. So when I first started this, the concept of like, hey, let me see if I can write a book. That was 2014. My wife, who is here tonight, and I appreciate, she is a global marketing director, and she will travel the world at times and be gone for 7 to 10 days. So during that time, one time, I decided I'd like to try to write a book. Let me see what I can do. I got about 15,000 words into it while she was gone, and I got stuck. I put it in the digital shelf and I left it alone. But one of the things that it taught me was, what did I like? What is really important to me in the books I read? As a reader, my whole life, I've always been drawn back to books that I love. And I was like, why? Why is that? Why do I go back to those books so much? And so for the next year, I went back and looked and reread, of course, but I would look and I would study the books and I'd go, why do I like this character? What engages me about them? And so about a year later, this same trip that my wife takes came up again. And I'm like, you know what? Either I'm going to do it or I'm not. I had found out that Word wasn't working for me, so I found Scrivener. I was like, ta-da! You know, the clouds open and everything else happens, and I'm amazed. So I got Scrivener, and I pounded out that book in about a week and a half. And I looked at it from a minimally viable product, which was, you know, I'm not going to spend hundreds of dollars on a cover. I don't know if anyone's going to like this. I made the vast mistake of thinking I could edit my own work. Let's not revisit that particular item anymore. And then, but as a reader, I looked at it and I knew that when I go on Amazon on, let's say, Friday night, and I'm going to read for the weekend, I would look for series that had 3 books or 4 books or 5 books. And so I knew that just from that experience as a customer, I needed 3 books out before probably a lot of what I would call whale readers would be engaged with anything. So I did everything I could to get 3 books out really, really fast. And I did that in November. And then on the 3rd book, or actually I should say in between books 2 and 3, my wife and I took a trip. And she had been asked to be the minister, if you will, the person who married 2 of her really good friends. And so this was down in Cabo, Mexico, which I had never been to before, and which is a really beautiful place. And one thing that I found out down there was if I could, their sales taxes, basically, okay. So the sales taxes down in Mexico was a situation where instead of spending, let's say, $1,000 here in Texas a month on sales taxes, that would be my whole year down there. And so I quickly found out that for that same $1,000 that I was spending in taxes, we could live. And so I was looking at my 2 books at that time, and I said, you know, I'm making about $7.50 a day a book out of these little bitty vampire books, you know, vampire science fiction books that I just put out. And so I did the math on a spreadsheet, and I figured out if I could knock out 20 of these, I could make $54,000 a year, and we could retire in basically 2 years. And so that was my goal. It was 20 books to hit 50K, and that's what I was going to do. And I had no clue what that meant, but I had knocked out a couple of books. And so, hey, let's keep going. And so I did book 3, and book 3, all of a sudden now I'm making $15 a day a book. Book 4 hit, and now I'm making $20 to $30 a day a book. And then book 5 hit. And between 4 and 5, I started doing a couple $100s a day, $300 a day. I'm blessed to say, instead of 20 books to hit 50K in a year, this July, I hit 50K. It's talked. And that's gross. So here in July, I just hit it. And it's been a wild, blessed ride. And so one of the things that I did was back in, I had a conversation with my wife, like, let's say February. And she made a comment about helping people. And it was really in my heart to try to help whoever else I could. And there are a lot of good things on kBoards, but there's a lot of things that are kind of not so good. And so I had put out some comments on kBoards, and they weren't well received. So, so I went ahead and helped some people that were helping me on my book, and I helped mentor them. And then book 6 came out, and I said, you know what, I'm going to give this, this support thing one more chance. This is in the middle of March. So I said, okay, let me go to kBoards. I wrote a letter after the success of the most recent release, and then I deleted that letter because I was stupid and it was late. And I get up the next morning and I write another one and said, okay, here are the things that are happening to the people I'm helping. Not just myself, but those that kind of came after me, and I said, hey, let me help them and let me give them some advice to see if we can duplicate this. And we had 3 individuals, and we, out of those 3, at the time that we did it, all 3 were top 10,000, had books in the top 10,000. One of them has been on podcast. His name is T.S. Paul. He's made $10,000 a month. We had some success. And so I reached out and said, hey, everyone, we got this little bitty thing going. We can't promise anything, but if you'd like to come in and join us, the only real rule is don't be ugly. That's the only rule. And we made it to where you had to sign in just so we could kick out those that were ugly. I think we kicked out 6, and it's grown to 425. And probably 4 of them actually type, and the other 412 lurk. So it's probably more like about 15 or 20 actually get involved, but there's a lot of lurking, and that's okay. because there's a lot of good information that comes down. And if you want to get involved, that's great. And if they don't, that's okay too. So one of the decisions I made, and I going back to the beginning, I decided if I'm going to do this, I had my own company, consulting, and sorry, I was, so had my own company, and I needed to make sure that I wasn't going to be doing a lot of time. And I said, okay, go wide, go Amazon. Easy decision, go Amazon, because I didn't have to worry about trying to understand 4 or 5 different integrations. I didn't have to understand Apple. I didn't have to go to either draft to digital. I didn't need to do that. So that was my whole decision on going Amazon. It was like, it's easier. So that's what I did. And then looking at it from the standpoint of social, I said, well, I understand Facebook. I understand all the others, okay, but I'm going to focus, and I decided that I'm going to keep, since I'm Amazon, I'm going to use the forums, which I hadn't known very many authors to use very effectively, but I'm going to use the forums, and I'm going to use Facebook, and that's it. I'm going to limit myself because I only have so much time. And I'm going to be really good on those 2, but that's it. And then I looked at it and said, okay, we've done these 2 things, and I made some mistakes along the way, and I hope to, kind of talk to them. But there are others. How many have heard that you shouldn't put, let's say, the F-bomb in your books? Or should you? No, yes. Should not put it in there. Well, my personal feeling is, like a buffet, I don't like to go to a buffet where they don't use spice. I'd rather go to one where I don't like the spice than a bland one. And so I decided, hey, you know what? I'm just going to write the way I write. And those people who aren't my tribe, they will self-select themselves out of this. In the first 5 books, I have some variant of fuck 300 plus times. By book 5, those that were in the military are in reviews telling those that were giving me problems, shut up. We're in the military, we talk like that, get over it. And so I have a really, really supportive group. And one of the things that did it is, in the back of book 1 in the author notes, I laid it out. I said, you know what, I'm a brand new author. And I'm talking like this because I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to do what I do, and I'm going to hope somebody does it. And I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm going to do. And I hope it's great. I hope you enjoyed the book. And then book 2, I said, wow, this is book 2, and I'm really sorry about the editing. And by book 4, somebody that was, actually his name is David Downunder, he's part of the Australian Navy, reached out to me and said, I'll help you. I like this story. So by book 4 is my first book with 5-star average because one of my fans reached out. By book 5, we had like 4 or 5 people. And one of the reasons for me related to editing that I don't do it very much is I'm impatient and I need it turned around fast. I typically turn a book around in 21 days. I released, the latest book was released on Thursday. I'll do a week where I'm just kind of vegging, and then I'll slowly start getting into it. I was words complete on my latest book Monday morning. I released Thursday evening. And I already had, at the time that I was words complete, meaning that I had finished it, I already had 15 chapters through 4 or 5 editors, a production editor, and waiting on another final person. And so that's been a part of the podcast as well. And because I hacked the process, I'm going to look at it as I had to have quality. My fans were saying, you have a great story, but you really need to get your, and your correct. Or there, and there. So we did that. We hacked it and we kept going. And there are a lot of ways that you can accomplish your own personal process. You just break it down and say, okay, this is the one that's holding me back. Some individuals will say, I can't type that fast. Great. Record it on your, maybe not record it on your way to work, but record it and use the audio if you can. And if not, find another way. As a society, as humanity, we can get to the moon. We can figure out how to get a few more words on that page every day. So don't limit yourself whatsoever to that, and you can get it out faster. I chose to do the 30-day because I know of the Amazon stuff, right? And the 30-day cliff, which for me is 18 days, by the way. I have all of the notes. I can look at my charts, and I can tell you at day 18, I'm going to be substantially down from everything else. Now, whether or not that means that most of my people have already purchased the book, not necessarily, but I can see that it's pretty dramatic. So one of the things that happened when T.S. Paul came out with one of his little short stories, and I'll talk to that in a minute because that's another rule, right? You can't make money on short stories. Who've heard that one or at least read it? Quite a few of you. Well, there's $10,000 a month he's making, so I'm thinking that's kind of you know? So the rules that we hear, I don't believe them most of the time. I've had a wild experience this weekend. I was at ArmadilloCon, and it wasn't intentional necessarily, but it happened. It was this weekend. Why not come up and do it? Now, I've been hearing a lot of things related to TradePub. How many things here that TradePub hates us? TradePub always looks down at us. TradePub does this. But that's what I've been hearing. And so I kind of went into it expecting kind of a lot of negativity. Not the case. Oftentimes, whenever I would get something negative, I'd go up and ask the person afterwards to explain what they were talking about. And let me give you an example real quick as an aside. One individual, an author who's had 20 or 30 books published, an older gentleman, was talking about how he's read a lot of indie books and they were trash. And he was pretty vehement about this. And what he was going is he's like, they need a filter. And I'm just thinking about this, thinking, well, that's not, that's what I'm hearing. So I went up there and I asked him afterwards to continue. And finally I understood the gentleman is a writer, and there was a lot of indie publisher or indie writers that would send him their manuscripts on his personal time and saying, would you read this and would you give me a blurb for it? And I'm like, no wonder I'd be telling them to go away, you rude individual. So I understood now what he's saying. If you're just passing it up to a guy who doesn't know you from Adam, maybe perhaps if it's his personal time, we should make sure the stuff is good. It makes sense to me. And so I had at least 3 of these experiences up there with the trade pubs where, I was talking to someone and said, do you guys hate indies? And he's like, I don't care. This is a guy who's an imprint of Simon & Schuster that was up there. And he's like, whatever success. As long as you have success, I don't care. More power to you. And so it really was an eye-opening experience for me compared to what I'd been reading and then what I was experiencing. And so moving on to the part of the process related to writing it, my first book was pantsed. How many pantsers do we have in here? None? 5? Wow. Oh, okay, my bad. Okay, so typically you have all the little things. Pants. You sit down and you start typing. You're pretty much typing by the seat of your pants, and that's where your story goes. You maybe have an idea where you start, maybe a particular point along the line, and then you get there. My first book was very pantsed. My second book was pretty pantsed. By my third book, it's getting pretty complicated. And so now I had a little tiny outline on the back of an envelope. And then by book 4, I'm trying to figure out how do I do something that at least lets me do, and what I figured out was I was trying to figure out how to do beats. Right? And so these things kind of come up. Now, I'm not an outliner. An outliner is going to sit there and they're going to point every major piece of your story. They're going to have a little, this is what's going to happen, and then this, and then this, and they follow it. And that's very much what I've learned is a very personality-driven object. I can't go that far. I tried it, a year and a half ago, and it failed miserably. So I kind of started doing a beats. And then you can look in the reviews, and the people are just like, I don't know how he gets all of this stuff to fit together. And I'm like, because it's all in Excel. So I had to figure out how to do that. And, engaging people, we mentioned before that one of the reasons that Matt and I met was at the Smarter Artist Summit. And one of the individuals there, Andrew Chaperone? Andre Chaperone. So he said something about that. And Andre is actually really, really well known in email marketing. And one of the things that are really a problem is first getting someone to open an email and then open the second email is challenging. And so there's a logic behind it related to the psychology of the brain. And so one of the things that I had noticed was I have a very high reread rate on my books. The traditional I've read an article that said 63% of a traditional published series goes from book 1 to book 2. Probably lower than that, you can get tossed. Higher than that, you're amazing. My personal, because I track everything on my sales. My highest month was 85% from book 1 to book 2. My lowest was around 69. And the deal with that 69 I found out was when I sold book 1 for 99 cents. It lasted about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, and I took it off and went back to $2.99. My reviews got better. My money stayed the same, and I didn't have such a low, read-through rate. So typically my average is around 75%. Once you get someone in book 2, typical read-through rates for most that I've heard, and certainly for myself, is anywhere from 90 to 98%. And from a sales perspective, disregarding the rate, you always want to go back and resell to the same customer because you've already sold them once. And that's the most important aspect of it, is getting them into your funnel, which I know that Sean, Johnny, and Dave talk about. Okay, not Dave, but Sean and Johnny will talk about. And so I'm looking at this and said, okay, I'm going to write a series, and I wanted it longer because my personal reading was at least 3. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do like 13. I had 13 titles. And then somewhere around book 4, I'm listening to a podcast that says you should have multiple entry points. I'm like, well, I don't have that. And then by then, the fans are getting up, and my 13-part series is 21 books. And I'm like, wow, okay, entry point. Well, I've got 3 major arcs, and kind of tying this into the chaperone comment, open loops. The item that you've seen or that you've read is you should not have cliffhangers. How many people believe you should put a cliffhanger in your book? Okay, and the reason for doing it is
get them to the next book.
Get them to the next book, right? And what's the argument for not doing it? Piss them off, right? All right. So Matt and I had like a half an hour argument on the definition of a cliffhanger. In fact, we were at Wikipedia yesterday going, this is what Wikipedia says about a cliffhanger, motherfucker. And so what we came up with was we couldn't agree. And so my definition of a cliffhanger is someone is hanging on the side of a cliff and about to die, and you end the book. And that upsets people, right? So is that everyone's general concept of a cliff? Yes, yes, yes. Yes, everyone do this and then point at Matt. Okay, so Matt, what is your...
She disagrees.
Okay, Paula, what's your definition of a cliffhanger?
I have so satisfactorily wrote a story, and I have ended this story in its natural conclusion that you want to follow a character I've created in this book that goes to the next one.
Complicated.
Okay, but that...
It's like a teaser, right?
No, well, that's not a teaser. You finished it. You just want to be with the...
This particular story has reached its natural conclusion, but there is a continuing element to the story
Yes.
and the characters that I must find out what happens to the rest of the characters.
Okay, so you're in the Matt camp of what a cliffhanger is. I would tend to think it's a teaser, not a definition of a cliffhanger. 77 to 2. We win. All right, so one of the things that I do in my books is, and that I loved, is I will open up a story, a minor thing. Here's an example. 3 of my characters, Team BMW, which is Bobcat, Marcus, and William, 2 guys from the military and a rocket scientist, have decided to open up a bar in space. They're going to call it All Guns Blazing. They have been working on this bar 2 books. They still haven't finished it, but you get more and more invested in the concept of them opening this bar, and it's minor. No one's gonna die, probably not. It's space, it could happen, but no one's gonna do it. But there are so many of these, and so tying it to the Andre comment, he talked about open loops. A person's brain, when they know that there's a start of something, they want to know what it finishes. They need to know that it closes. So my question when I was talking to him, trying to figure out, why are they going through? I'm very intuitive when I write. I'm intuitive because I've been reading my whole life, and I've never gone through any classes past high school. So, well, okay, college, but let's not discuss that part. So he said, what's going on is if you open enough minor loops, it's going to have a resonance, and people are going to keep needing to know. And you tack that on with engaged characters that they want to visit again, and you've got them. You got them right where you want them, which is avid fans who want to be with you the next time. I literally have people going, your books are like cocaine, I hate you, when is the next book out? And I'm like, motherfucker, Thursday was the last one. So there's a real benefit related to that. And I think that that's part of the answer. If you like a series, right? And yes, Cozy Mysteries, I've had discussions with other individuals related to you can't do this. Yes, you can. You do it as a part that I want to be with your person, and you allow someone else. Maybe they have a little child that it pulls on our heartstrings, and that little child is growing up in the background. And then something else happens. And then maybe they're just moving. They're moving from their house that they've been in, and you put it to the next book before they close it. Just think about these little things that we are invested in life. It doesn't always have to be something that's dramatic. It can be something that we just want to know what's going on. She sent a little letter to Timmy. Timmy hasn't read it yet. So there are ways to do this that you can encourage people to stay inside your story. And if you have action adventure, it could be as simple as we're designing a gun. Tune in next week to find out what we do with it. I did this as well. There's just multiple. And honestly, it's not that I intended to do this. The reason that I did it is when I first started writing, I looked at how long did I have to how many words did I need to write? Because my business mind is going, if I can get away with 50,000, I can get more books out. More books at $2.99 is a win. If I have to do 90,000, that's fewer books. And I ended up at 70,000. And so my books would be going along, and I'd finish, and I'd be like, I'm at 70,000, I'm out of here. Next week, you can read the rest of this story. And so that's kind of how it grew up for me. I was putting it out there, and I always made sure I closed the major part of the story, but I would have all these things hanging on and these characters that they want, and so they would, keep going to the next story, trying to figure that out. Unfortunately, once or twice, they're like, whatever happened to Ivan? Next book, Ivan is coming back. And I tell that story because that just happened. Someone's like, where's Ivan? And I'm like, Ivan, oh, that's Ekaterina's. Oh, shoot. So I'll bring Ivan back, or they'll ask me a story. And when you engage with your fans, they will tell you what they want you to write about. And so if you have a limited place that you have to worry about going and figuring it out, once again for me, Facebook or the forums, and there are people who will be on one or the other and won't cross-populate. They're not going to do it. And occasionally one person will say, oh, you answered that over on Facebook. And I'm like, oh, sorry. Let me put that down. But other things, my fans know I will do all sorts of things that are crazy because I can. My attitude is, from that standpoint, is very much outlaw. There was one book where somewhere around book 4, book 5, so I'm like 90 days into this. Remember, book 1, 2, and 3, very fast, boom, out. 4 is in December, that's 45 to 60 days, and then so on and so forth. Somewhere in there, I was reading on kBoards before I kind of gave it up, that if you don't have a professional cover, you are not a professional writer. It pissed me off. Guess where I started talking about it? I got on my soapbox inside of my own book. And so I basically went through all of the things because I was carrying people along in my story. My author notes were, if you look at them, you'll see this is almost like a journal entry into the life of an author. And by book 3, book 4, they're reading it, they're as much engaged with me as an author as they are the characters in the books. So at this point I said, hey, I'm going to get on a soapbox, a rant if you will. You can skip this. And so I just went on a rant about that. And at the end I'm like, I looked up the definition of professional and it was this, that, and the other. So I guess by definition I'm not a professional regardless of my cover. So, I'm encouraging you, be authentic in your author notes because people will engage with you and will tell their friends because they love you as an author and they want to support you. One of the things I did in book 8 was we came out of Smarter Artists. And I said, I'm putting another book out because monthly, and I had met a lot of really cool writers. And I said, okay, I'm going to put something on Amazon forum that says if you'll go there and you'll fill it in, because my fans keep asking me, well, what are we going to do between Mike's 2 books, the next book? I'm like, well, tell you what, go there, and all of you, go to my forum, you'll find it, add your name, add your link to your books, introduce yourself. We had, 15, 20 people who took me up on it. And in book 8, I copied every one of those and put it in the back of my book. And then that's the only book that's actually printable too. And if you ever get the print copy at the moment, you'll see that every single one of those are in the back of my book because I can. Because I'm an independent author who's willing to go out there and support other independent authors. And then I had one person when I did that said, I bought a book from every single author on there just because I wanted to support you. So they supported all of y'all who were on there. Most of you had no clue who I was, but just because they loved me and they were excited about what I was doing. And so I keep pushing it. There's a new thing that we're doing where every so often it's like, hey, tell me what book you have. I'm trying to build this email list, and we're going to try to give Kindles to forward deployed military personnel. And I did the first one, and like beginning of July, and I told everyone straight up, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to highlight these individuals. They're indie authors, and some of them have no way to get a voice yet because they either don't have reviews, they can't get on BookBub, whatever the reason is. They're indie authors, check them out. You don't have to buy them. You know, if it isn't your cool thing, I'm not encouraging you to do that. But if you do, and you happen to buy something from Amazon, there's an affiliate link on there. That money's going to come back around, and I'm trying to buy Kindles for forward deployed military personnel. My original idea was, hey, you know what? Kindle Fires, $50 a piece. I'm doing well enough that I should be able to give away one a week, right? That seems like a great idea. So I put it up on my Facebook group. What do y'all think? And then what happened is we have military personnel who said, that's a bad Kindle for the military. Come again? Oh yeah, the screen is bad. It's out in the sun. The battery's not going to last long enough. It's really heavy. Okay, what's good? The $209 Kindle Paperwhite. Okay, let's talk. Oh, well, all right. And then what made me think about it was I was reading a story where, y'all probably, if you've read any action adventure related to the military, you've heard the same thing. What happens whenever it's the least, the person who wins the contract is the one who did it the cheapest, right? And I'm like, oh, hell no. I'm not going to be the guy that gives the cheapest Kindle. I'm going to be the one that does the right thing. So let's all work together here. I'm going to we're going to do this. I'm going to highlight independent authors for free. We're going to do this as an email. If you like any of them and click on it, you'll go to Amazon. If you buy anything, the book, something else, or nothing, that's fine. But if we get enough money going, we're all going to make it to where indie authors win, we send Kindle Paperwhites, and I'm happy to say the first Kindle Paperwhite is gone. The second one will go up this week. In July is about $400. Both of them were paid for. And it looks like we might have a chance to do it. The email list is 215 people so far with no advertising yet. But we can do this because we're indies, right? And so it takes a little bit of hacking the process to get people involved. But do it. You have success in you. Yes, I hit a really large amount. Yes, I got, 11 core books. So I keep looking at it as, how far along am I writing words compared to J.K. Rowling? And so at one point I'm at book 2 or whatever, and then I'm like, man, I'm at like book 4.5. So right now I'm somewhere around 800,000 words. How many have heard the truism, your first million words suck? All right, is that it? No one else has heard that. Okay, who said it? It's a major person, right? Stephen King. I thought it was Stephen King. So he says your first million words suck. And that might be true, but you can make a lot of money on the first million words. That first book of mine, that one that originally was horrible, and then I hacked and I got new editors in there quickly, and then horrible editors, but okay, another aside. Don't hire an editor where you have to do a special bank transaction to a small island. Even though he's like, oh yeah, absolutely, I've done 21 of my own books and they've been on blah, blah, blah. No, let's just say no.
No.
Yes, correct. So, where the heck was I at the side? I forgot.
After mistake 3.
I'm sorry?
After your mistake 3, you're
Still not following.
Stephen King.
Oh, Stephen King's Million, yes. So that first book, $20,000 is what it's made since November. When you look at the read-through rate of the series, if you can get something that's 75% and then 90 plus and blah, 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 each sale or each person that you get into your funnel is about $18 to $20 a pop. You can do some heavy advertising at that, let me tell you. I don't. I do about 15 bucks a day on Facebook right now. And part of it is because I can't seem to find a large enough audience that I dial in. And part of it is I'm selling and I'm writing the next book. The third part of it is, until recently, I didn't know what to do, because how many have heard you need to write to market? Anyone? Yes? A few here? And the concept, for those that haven't heard it, write to market means you go, you find the tropes related to something that's selling well, you make sure that there's room for you, which, by the way, space opera, thank you, Chris Fox, screwed. And then you write something that hits those tropes, and you already have a market because you've already studied what they want and you give it to them. The idea, of course, that you care to write in this market in the first place, right? So you look at it as a Venn diagram. What is selling? What do I want to write? Wherever they cross, that's what you try to write. And that's a good option because you can get covers to that. Now, if you happen to not know this and you decide that, you know, if I'm going to write something, I like vampires, I like kind of urban military stuff, and I like space opera. How can I make all three of those fit into one? And you think, this is amazing. And then you go ahead and you write the first book, and you go, how am I going to do a cover like this? Crap. And so you do the best you can, and you find out, you know, after a few weeks, you go, you know, I saw your covers. I didn't even pick it up till like the fourth time, and I had nothing else to do, and I'm like really surprised. It was good. Yeah. So redoing the covers, and the new ones came out. At least the first one came, and the second and fourth one came out. And so, you know, covers themselves, super important. You know, you're kind of probably hearing it if you've gone around with any of the podcasts. The probably most important piece of your book is your cover, because it's what's going to cause people to stop, look at the blurb, and even go give you a chance. So fortunately, I had enough skill to at least do decently at that. But I would tell you, even more so than massive editing, because you have Grammarly, Pro Writing Aid. How many of y'all are familiar with those applications? Okay, we're all there. There's one with Hemingway or something like that. So there are ways to help you. None of them? Okay, start writing. Okay, Grammarly is a big one. Pro Writing Aid. Pro Writing Aid. Hemingway, which was suggested again, and I've never used that one.
What was it called?
Hemingway, I believe.
Spell that. Hemingway?
Yes, that's in earnest. And so, you know, so let me give you when I write everything in Scrivener. I get 5 chapters. I drop those chapters to Grammarly, each little snippet that I do, right? And I make sure that it's at least Grammarly correct. And of course, I'm reading it and doing some minor corrections. I drop that out to my production editor, who then goes with 4 or 5 beta editor readers. They do that in Google Docs. Now, it's also probably done in Word. So I've looked at it in Grammarly. I've looked at it in Microsoft Word, which is a semicolon bastard. And we've done with the beta readers editors and them. And then it goes to one final before it comes back to me. But you can do a lot of your editing, and they will pick up different things. If you look at it Word and then drop it into Google Docs, you're going to find out it'll find things, corrections that Word didn't. So those are 2 either inexpensive or things you already have that will help your writing immensely from a corrective editing sort of situation. So once again, lost my train of thought. So that was.
Resources editing.
I'm sorry?
Resources and editing.
Yeah, so those are there. So do we have any questions?
Do you want to pass the cards up to the front and then we can...
Yeah. An email?
Do you use email lists?
I do. My personal email list has grown from about 2 people back in the early December. I've got 800 now. The only thing I've offered is, because my first editing was so horrible, I finally made a thing that said, look, I'll tell you what, as a thank you very much for sticking with me, I will make each new book 99 cents on the day it comes out for 24 hours. Here you go. And that is the only thing I offer. And I put it in the front and the back of the books, and that's kind of the only place that I push it. I'm trying Author Platform Rocket. I'm trying that, but I'm not going to get the results back for another week on the first month. The Facebook, I do Facebook ads direct to buy. I don't go to a landing page to try to drive anything, and I've got a little over 800 people on my email list. I do it only on, once again, when I release at the moment. And part of the reason for that is, once again, releasing every 4 weeks, pretty much. I have found out with T.S. Paul, when he was doing short stories, he got #1, the little bastard, on thank you very much, on the short story list, and he stayed there because there wasn't any competition. And I'm like, son of a gun, he's doing this. I want a bestseller. So I thought, you know what, let me go ahead and write a short story. I've got, at that time, 500 people or something on my list. I'm bound to get a little bestseller on this little niche. No, I'm not. But what I found out was, because I got so high in that list, even if it was 2, 3, or 4, people saw that book, that little short one, and backtracked it to my main series. And so I was getting leads, if you will, new people into my funnel, because they found me on this little small area with this short story. That marketing effort makes me $200 or $300 a month. So it's one of those situations where I'm like, I really like marketing efforts that make me money instead of spend it. So I'll did it again, and then, and continued adding, different things that are going on. All right, so first story, do you worry that a glut of content will change the indie book industry for the worst? No, and here's why. My competition is TV, is video games. That's entertainment. So my competition is other entertainment. And readers read a whole lot faster than you and I can put out. Unfortunately, a lot of individuals will never crack the marketing nut. They will never figure that out, and no one's ever going to find their books. Your job is to figure out how to make sure you get past that, right? So that people see your book. Writing seems hard until you get to the marketing part. When you get to the marketing part, you went, son of a gun. How many have, okay, let me ask these questions because it's kind of relevant to those that I've helped before in the past. How many are sitting before you've ever actually hit publish on any of your books? No books published. Okay, how many of you feel that you're sitting there in anticipation, worried about hitting the publish button? There's a few, right? So I had brunch with Krishan Keller-Hanna. If you listen to the Self-Publishing Roundtable, she was an individual I was talking to, and she has like 15 books planned out. She had multiples, and she was sitting there not hitting the publish button. And so finally he's like, push the freaking button, let me explain it to you. How many have ever played with paper stocks? Anyone? So you do, okay. How many of y'all remember that when you actually put money in the stock market, life changed dramatically? Exactly. That's what happens when you hit the publish button. When you hit the publish button, your focus changes dramatically. Things that you thought you cared about, no more. And you will actually sit there and start learning at a new pace because you have something to work on. So whatever you do, I would encourage you, even if your major book right now isn't going to be for a year, write a short story, put it under a pen name if you're too embarrassed, and hit publish. You will change your future. You will change your ability to focus, and you will be the better for it. And if you don't like it in a month, unpublish it. But hit that publish button. So I don't think it's going to be a situation of a glut. I think you will perhaps saturate particular niches. And so let me talk about that real quick. When I hacked the system, when we had the 3 individuals that I was starting to help, because once again, kBoards, and we said, okay, everyone knows Amazon will not tell you how far someone reads in the middle of your book. So if you have, let's say, 300-page book, you don't know if you're losing them at 250 pages, at 25 pages. You don't know, right? So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, I wrote, call it 210,000 words before I could figure out if my series was going to go anywhere. I write really fast. These guys, not so much. So why don't we take that first concept book and break it into 3 15,000 or 20,000 word books and find out, can we sell from book 1 to book 2 to book 3? Does that make sense? We created short stories, right? And we found out, could you carry someone through what is essentially your first book? And if it wasn't going to work, you needed to retool that. That was the concept. Does that make sense? Or do I need to? Yes? Okay. Now, when T.S. Paul did his first book, I don't know what I was doing, but he never asked what price should it be at. What price does everyone know short stories should be at? Say that a little louder. 99 cents. Paul took Amazon's suggestion of $2.99 and put it up there. Man, he started selling. Short stories sell at $2.99. Will you get people going, I'll never do this? Yes. Just like people say for cliffhangers, I hate them. When's the next book coming out? They will be very vociferous. But because of Kindle Unlimited, a lot of people who really can't afford it are already in Kindle Unlimited. The ones that just wanted to say something, whatever. You know, you're going to suffer something, but you can make it at $2.99. And we will find out. The goal, remember, was can we get people from book 1 to book 2 to book 3 short stories? And if you did, you've got something. Continue it. So one of the other ones, Art DeForest. You can go check him out online. Arthur DeForest was one of them. He had a concept, and I read it, and I'm like, I don't think this is going to work. So he went back and retooled and gave it back to me again. And this always happens. The second time I send it back going, I don't think this is going to work. They know better than I do, which is fine. It might not be my subject. It might not be whatever. So Art went off and did it. He wrote book 1, book 2, book 3. His success compared to Scott's success, which Scott had also given me a series, and I was like, I don't think this is going to work. It was some time travel. It's like, but you know, maybe it's just not me. And finally Scott said, I have this other idea. And so he pitched it, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds really good. Why don't you let me see it? So he sent it to me. And for those who I haven't already offended, let me try this. So I was sitting there, and I read it, and it was the editing was horrible. It was a paragraph with multiple people talking and commas and everything else. But I said, my text back to him was, this is the shit. Because I wanted to know what was going on with her. You left me in the middle of this. I had already engaged. Does that make sense? I'd already engaged with the person in like 3,000 words. I'm like, I need to know more. And so that's the one that he took. Arts, I never engaged with it. I tried. I could never engage with it. And he took the 3 of them and he closed it down. And I kind of call those your passion project, your passion story. How many have stories that you really, really want to tell? And no matter what I tell you to do, I'm finishing that book. Yeah, exactly, right? Now, I've had this happen to me multiple times with authors. You know, I've helped quite a few. I had literally had one day that I was here in Austin, and I started in Japan. I talked to someone here in the States. I talked to someone in England, and I finished in Australia that day. Talking to authors that whole day. It was amazing. It was like, I'm a world talker. This is I'm important. And that lasted till like the next day. So with that though, Art looked at it and he said, you know what? I want those sales. And so he created a new series. And this time it was he chose a vampire. He was successful. His first book, top 10,000. His second book, good sales. So, and once again, he's doing $2.99 at short stories. He was starting to make some money. Really effective. And what we learned from hacking that is, I look at it this way. Every person in here has got 20 amazing ideas. Maybe 6 of them are going to actually sell anything. How fast do you want to figure out which 6 are good? Really fast, right? Would you like to do the first 14 and then hit one? No. So what you do in the real world is you go, how much do I have to show before I understand that one's not a good seller, and I set it aside. That was the original hack of doing 3 short stories of equaling 1 book, right? What we found out in the 20 books is you can do 3,000 words, right? If you do 3,000 words and you talk to the individuals that we have like in the beta reader group, the whale readers, I've suggested before, ask them, give me a 1, 2, or 3. Here's my 3,000 words. A 1 says, like I did with Scott's original one, tell me more. Tell me more. I don't care how bad your editing is, tell me more. Fix it, please. but tell me more. If they give you a 2, it says, this was good. I don't need to know anymore. You know, there's nothing compelling. And that's where, unfortunately, a lot of books are today. It's nothing compelling. It's a good book. I read it. I'll probably read number 2, but I'm not going to come back to it. And if I don't come back to it, I'm probably not going to tell my friends. And 2 on, and 2 friends, and 2 friends. And a 3 is, I couldn't even finish it. And maybe give me a sentence. That's it. These are not professional reviewers. You're just asking them to give you a number saying, what was your emotional, visceral reaction to this story? And if you can do 3, how fast, can most people do at least 3,000 words a week?
Sure.
Yeah, in 20 weeks, you might have 6 ideas that you can sell. And then you choose what you want, right, out of those. Perhaps maybe don't merge vampires with science fiction, aliens, and space opera. It makes for a difficult set of book covers, let me tell you. But so, you know, that was the whole glut thing. Do I publish other authors as a small press or my own work only forever? Sweetheart, what are we going to do?
I think there's a need, based on obviously the turnout here, for us to be able to share our knowledge and everything, the learnings that Michael's had. So we're planning to put together an independent publishing ability for anybody who wants to take advantage of it. So we want to be able to help out.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do. I've heard that serialized novels no longer sell well. Okay, anytime someone starts with, I've heard, usually an indication for me to go, what? I don't believe it. That readers are burned out on it. What do you think? Okay, let me, I think it was this morning, in the 20 books to 50K group on Facebook, which once again, anyone can join, don't be a jerk. We'll kick you out. Other than that, that's the only rule. Be optimistic, support everybody, learn, and engage if you will. We had an individual talking about how they did cliffhangers, there we go again, related to a serialized fiction. We had a discussion. They're making money. They're making good money with the serial. They're making money to pay bills. That to me is good money. I had a question one time, what is money that's going to save, you know, that's going to make a difference in your life? And I was really kind of shooting for the, you know, $300 will make a difference in my life. And then I had one individual, Will Selling's like, you know, 50K would be good. I'm like, oh God. Not the answer. And then I had something that really kind of got me in the heart. And it's an author in Australia who said, you know what, money to pay the light bill, that would be world changing to me. That would be life changing, just the ability to change that. And I'm like, that's what I want to help. That's who I want to help. That's the one that, you know, $150, we got this. We can do this. We've done it, you know. But the thing is, sometimes you have to understand your passion project might not be the one that's going to sell. If you have to get it out, you have to do it. So do it quick. Find out if it is the one that's going to sell. Just realize you have more ideas. One of those ideas is going to work. It might need tweaking, and there's a lot of help to get it done. So yes, I do think serialized novels can work, and a lot of it is going to be on packaging. There's a lot of things that you will have to understand about that. Readers they're reading it. So what is it? Yes, I do think that'll work. How long, number of pages are these books? 70,000 to 78,000 words, approximately 300, you know, this is Amazon, not CreateSpace. So approximately as low as 280, as high as 390, like-ish. And then pages. Yeah, not KENP. KENP add another 60 or 80 on top of that. Thank God.
What was the number?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sorry?
What was the numbers on it? What was the number?
Anywhere from 289 on the very low side. And by the way, there's the whole KENP 1.0, 2.0 debacle. So let me go back to that for a second. So remember back in like February and March, whenever they like came out and they readjusted everybody's KENP? Okay, I use Scrivener exclusively, mainly because I find it very easy, and I just hit a few buttons and out it goes. Well, I get nailed for like 15% of my KENP. And of course, on kBoards at that time, everyone's like, if you've been nailed for 15 to 20%, you've been doing something horrible. I'm like, I've been using Scrivener. How is that horrible? But going back, I was in the process of going, can I go to $3.99 on my books? $2.99, $3.99, $2.99. I'm scared. What am I going to do? And I'm reading these things with like, I'll do it for $3.99. No one's going to matter. I'm sitting there biting my fingernails trying to figure out what am I going to do. They came in and screwed me. $3.99. We're there. As soon as KENP came in and lowered my stuff at 15%, I'm like, oh, that's plenty. I need the money. Let's $3.99. Didn't affect me at all. Did not affect me. So if you happen to be on the whole $2.99, $3.99, my encouragement is go $3.99. There is a mental understanding with readers that $2.99 is kind of the cheaper people, and $3.99 is a little bit more quality. And if you have the quality, you can probably go to $4.99 without a problem. I've already taught my fans that it's $3.99, and I'm having, my series is 21 books. If I tack on another dollar, I'm tacking another $21 to them. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Scrivener is Scrivener. What is the first step? I'm very new at all of this. With everything I've done, what is the first step? Wow, good question. What would be the first step for me? Are you, if you're willing to answer this, are you asking from a generalized or like a method of like physically, I'm going to operate this, or what's the process, or what?
That was my question.
Okay.
Just like when you start practical, really, I mean, what's the first and the second step to kind of jump in when you've absolutely never done this before?
Okay. This is what I would encourage you to do. You can do this on Word. You can do it in Notepad. It doesn't matter. Write 3,000 words of your story. Find out, do they want more? Because if they don't, 3,000 words on anything that you're using, it doesn't matter what hardware you use. You can do it on a typewriter, although it would be kind of difficult to get it to people. Find out if they're like, give me more. When you get to give me more, then I would use Scrivener or a couple of the other ones and invest more time in that. But it's give me more. You want them to already be engaged at 3,000 words, not 210,000 to find out whether or not they're involved. And you can do it because you have, and all of you have, that story in you that's going to grip them. And if you do it 3, 4, or 5 times and you're coming out, no one's gripping, find out why. It's usually an emotional engagement. You're disconnected from your writing, and you're not writing people emotionally. One of the things I don't do, I'm not very descriptive in my books. Yet people are constantly asked, or in this case, it's actually been researched, can you see yourself? And the answer for the research has been, when I read the books, I'm in the story. And that's not with me telling them a lot of the drapes were blue and they were flowing in the wind. No, I'm like, you're in a room. This is what's going on. And it's a lot to do with the people and their talking and their actions. And people fill in the rest. And this is a subjective opinion. This is just me as a reader. I get hung up on that, notwithstanding my literary friends. So, which I've had arguments with. So, discussions, yes. We'll talk about that. Does that help you? So, it's not even a short story. It can be 3,000 words of your book. Does that help a little? Because if you can't grab people in your first 3,000 words, remember how they're going to look at your cover, they're going to look at your blurb, they're going to look inside, and if you don't grab them in 2 or 3 pages, next, they're gone. So you really, that first 3,000 words has to grip them. Yeah, we actually, on the 20 Books group, there's a lady by the name of Diane Velasquez. Her and her sister Doreen, which they're actually older ladies, they're grandmothers, but they're sisters. We affectionately refer to them as the double Ds. I had nothing to do with that name. But they love it, and they are in charge of connecting with beta readers and beta editors. And I mean beta editors for you editors out here. They're the ones that are going to help you kind of clean it up enough so that you can get it to the beta readers. Because a lot of things that we found with brand new authors is they don't have the funds, right? We don't have the money. We don't have the connections. One of the things that had been asked to me when my dad and my stepmother found out that I was writing, and all of a sudden I get this call from my stepmother who's like, I've got a friend,
And this friend has asked me whether or not I would read his book and tell him if it's good. And I've read it, but I don't want to tell him what I really think. And I'm like, well, Mom, here's my opinion on these things. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter what I think. What matters is whether or not anyone's willing to actually buy the book. And guess how easy it is to figure that out? How easy is it to find out whether or not someone wants to read your stuff? Press publish. And whether or not someone's going to read it, you'll find out. But what you'll also do is you'll immediately go, all right, I got 3 sales. Was it my cover? Was it my blurb? Was it my book? You'll focus and you'll figure it out. And yeah, what I'm trying to say is if you write the first 3,000 words of your book and you can't, people who are willing to tell you, and they're like, no, start, either tweak it, start again, figure out what that issue is. But your first 3,000 words are going to nail them or not nail them. So that is my encouragement on that part. The publishing stage of my memoirs, I'm a bit overwhelmed of who to use for hardcovers, Ingram Spark, and who to use for ebooks, CreateSpace, Lulu, Amazon, etc. Any advice for selecting print on demands? I use CreateSpace. I found it to be very easy. You were, without offending anyone, unless you're a sports person, you know, your memoirs probably not going to sell that much, right? It's a passion project, right? It's a passion project. And CreateSpace will do a fantastic job. I've got an example of one of my books that CreateSpace did. I was just in, literally today, I was in a thing talking about the new state of indie publishing. I thought they would be talking about ebooks. They were talking about publishing. But the answer is CreateSpace and Ingram Sparks both do phenomenal work. The lady who was up there who had one of each said, you know what, I kind of lean toward CreateSpace. So from a person who's used both, CreateSpace seemed to be the better solution, if that answers that. Hardcovers, nice, but just more expensive, right? Anything we do in any print on demand is going to be very expensive because they're going to take a cut of it. So,
a big cut.
Yeah, a very big cut. Or to give you, so all right, so let's see, my books are $3.99, 2 through whatever. I get 70% of that, so we're talking about $2.80, let's call it, right? To get $2.80 out of a CreateSpace, I have to charge like $13, $14 in order to get that. So it's just one of those situations where I can either charge $3.99, very easy to sell that, or I have to charge $14 and above, and it almost feels like I'm trying to rob them. So now I put it down and I'm making $1.80. I hope that helped. It really isn't, you're good either way. Choose either one. It's a preference at that point. Answer that. How do you find readers, especially at the beginning? How can you tell read-through rate? What did you do about covers? Okay, in no particular order. Read-through rate, I looked at it as if, obviously sales is easy enough. 100 sales, 80% read-through rate, right? So that one's easy. The one I did for KENP is I looked at it and I said, okay, this book is 300 KENP. So for every 300, that was one book. This is the best guesstimate you're going to get for KENP. Book 2, 350 pages. So for every 350 pages, one book. Once again, I started looking at it. How many did I divide up? Divided by the next book. Does that make sense?
No.
Okay. So they only tell us how many pages it could be. If they tell us, let's say 300 pages is a book, that could be one book. That could be 2 people at 150 pages, right? It could be 3 people at 100 pages. Does that make sense? Yeah, they don't tell us. So the best way you can fudge this is to divide how many KENP they tell us divided by how many KENP that book is. And you find that out by going into your author dashboard where that book is. For those who hit publish, I suggest you do it. Because then you'll be able to actually go to the KENP aspect of it. And when you click on it, it's little bitty at the bottom of this rectangle. So they don't make it very easy to find, but you can find it. And then you divide, obviously, however many KENPs you have by that number will give you an approximate number of books. Is the best way that you can probably figure it out. And then it becomes another case of I sold 80, I sold 100, divide them to get 80% read-through rate. You're looking at me like I'm still confusing you.
Say 100 of the first book, 80 of the second.
Yes. Yes.
Explain what, some people don't understand that KU works in K and the K.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Explain the difference between KDP.
All right. So KDP Select is you invest it for 90 days. When you do that, you're going to put your book into the second largest bookstore in the world, outside of Amazon, right? And when you do that, you're telling Amazon, I will sell this nowhere else. So you're not going wide. You're only going strictly in KU. And it matters, especially depending on your genre, and it is kind of genre dependent, but they then pay you a portion of a penny for every page that someone reads. So if you have a book with 100 pages, recently it's been 0.047, you will get approximately 47 cents for every 100 pages. Does that make sense? Okay, so if you have a 300-page book, you will carry the $100.41, okay? So if you have now, if you're fantasy and you've got these, I don't know, these 120,000 word tomes, you might get more money from KU than you would selling the book. Does that make sense? It's possible, not for me, but it's possible. So that's kind of what's going on with KU. They pay you by, and the annoying thing is they don't tell you what this number is until the 15th day after the month that you got reads. So I won't find out for July what I'm going to get per page until August 15th. There is great gnashing of teeth on August 15th. So some days, sometimes it's awesome. Wow, they went up. This is great. This is wonderful. On sometimes it's like, those SOBs, I'm getting out of here as soon as I can. So I have found that they were starting to get down to like 42 cents. And I was telling people in my author notes, if they keep going down, I'm going to have to get out and go wide, which means going to Apple and the others. And there was great gnashing of teeth for my readers. My percentage is just close to 50-50 KU as income compared to sales. So it kind of varies depending on how much Amazon pays me per page. Recently, they got rid of a lot of scammers, and so they jumped back up to like 48 cents or thereabouts, or 0.48 per penny, if you will, per page. And so they jumped way back up. And so even now, they went back and what they call clawback money from people that they figured were scammers. And I ended up getting like a $400 bonus from a couple of months ago because they took that money back and redistributed it to everybody. So they're doing a lot better with the scammers now than they used to. So, but that's kind of what KU is. You're in there for 90 days. Every 90 days you re-up, and it is a decision. When I came, when we were here in March, once again, they always say as an indie writer, you're a writer and you have a publisher hat. How many would say, I'm a writer first and a publisher second? Is that most everybody? Okay, I'm actually a publisher first and a writer second. I have my business hat on first, typically, and that explains why I went through this hacking process, right? I looked at it from a business perspective. How much time do I have? I don't have time to go wide. I'm going Amazon. How much time do I have social? I don't. I'm going to do Amazon forums because I'm already Amazon anyway, and I'm going to do Facebook. That's it. So when I look at it, I'm going to, come at it from the publisher's perspective. I don't remember where I was going with that. So,
Well, somebody had asked what KDMP was.
okay. So anyway, going back, that's how you get.
Your publisher first and a writer.
Yes. Yeah. So anyway, from that perspective, I'm always going to typically look at it from the business perspective. I'm not going to get as emotionally engaged with my stories because I'm going to try to find the one that people want to read that I want to write as quickly as I possibly can. And that's where I'm encouraging you. For instance, let's take this. If you want to be inside the bookstore, what do you think works better? Coming at it saying, I've sold 30,000 books on Amazon already, or I'm a brand new author here. Would you like me to write a book for you? Probably the first one, right? I've already generated fans. I've already generated obvious interest in my books. Now, by the time you do that, you might decide that you like the paychecks and screw the bookstore. But whatever happens, that is a way to do it and a way to get it there. Literary, right? There are different ways to try to get to the literary as well, but part of them is, in fact, I have no idea how you're going to do literary.
Thank you.
Very supportive, as always.
Yes. Do you sell books 1 through 3, 4, 6, 7? Okay, omnis. Is that extra money? Okay. I was really concerned. An omnibus, right, is whenever you're going to package your book up and you're going to say, I'm going to sell 1 to 3 for a cheaper price than if you buy them individually. One of the authors that has mentored me a little bit, his name is Rick Walteri. And one of the things I asked him one time, he's like, hey man, you need to make an omnibus. I'm like, oh man, I don't, the money and everything. He goes, it's not the same people. And so with great trepidation, just like whenever I was going to $3.99, I went and made my first Omni and sold practically none of them. And so what I did find out is some people really like Omnis, but it is a fraction of a group compared to who will buy the regular book. I just put out Omni number 2. So 4, 5, and 6, they're not that hard to do in Scrivener once someone tells you what to do. And so I get KE and P from it, which is nice, because occasionally what happens is those fans that have read books 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're going back again, they don't want to fill up their KU slots. They'll grab your omnibus. They're rereading a new book. I get paid again. I love you, Amazon. So it is extra money. It is not a large amount of money. It's generally different people. How do you find readers? Okay, we were doing this one. Read-through rate, covers. I did my first covers. If I had anything to do over again, I would have invested in new covers a lot earlier. I am paying an exorbitant amount of money for my new covers. They're cool, but I'm investing the money that I've made into that. Does that make sense? I paid I paid $5 for the model, and the way that I chose, my protagonist's name is Bethany Ann, and the way that I chose Bethany Ann was I went on an inexpensive website called photodune.net, and I found a particular model that had like 11 different poses. And I'm like, you're my model. It's like, you have about the body style, I'm thinking black hair, okay, we're good, okay, you're it. Because there was enough pictures. That was how I chose what she was. Now I've got a model and everything else, and they're amazing. And my wife gets involved to let me know how it needs to get tweaked. And I'm super excited that goes out, but it's with income from the book. Because minimally viable product assumes that you're not investing a lot until you know it's a hit. Does that make sense? How do you find readers? Well, I didn't actually do anything but put my books up. And then I found that I was getting a few readers. Now, how could that be? Part of it is because Amazon has new, and they actually push you a little bit in the beginning. If you have a cover that matters, and a blurb that's decent, and a 3,000-word hook in a genre that people want to read enough of, you'll probably get a good chance. If you need extra bonus, then you can go to, not BookBub, but you can go to other email lists which charge anywhere from $15 to $45, and there are certain ones that are pretty good, and you can get some pushes that way. And if you're not catching a lot, then you need to kind of go back and look and like, all right, I've paid $80 to get 3 different emails sent out, and I'm not getting, any traction. So if that's happening, you need to take a step back and go, okay, cover, blurb, writing, which is it? It could be in a genre that has 4 customers. It's like not too many people wanted sports tractor lawn racing. Okay, so that, that's another thing that you can look at. What is your editor process? Do you pay an editor? Yes, I do. How much? $400, but they're a production editor. What does that mean? I pay Steven because I have beta readers, fans, who will go through and they love because they get access to the book early. And they go through there, they read, they find a lot of things. Steven's responsible for obviously fixing any of them that he needs to fix. He knows my stories well enough to tweak things in my voice. That is super important. Have a voice. What does that mean? It means that whenever someone reads your writing, it's not bland. And this is one I have had editors take my voice out. I was too new to not let them do it. And so now I know if someone is an editor and they start changing my voice, meaning that if I read it, it doesn't resonate in my own mind. Does that make sense? I'm looking at that going, I wouldn't write it that way. Guess what? I'm changing it back. You know, I've had it a couple of anthologies that I've been asked to be a part of, which is great for your marketing because it means that all of us are sitting there trying to push it, and someone who reads, say, Chris Fox's book in one will also, I'll be in the same one, and so we'll cross-pollinate. So, I had a situation where they were changing my words, and I'm like, I tweaked it back. So yes, I do. I do pay them $400 because I don't want to sit there and go through, that's a good change, that's a bad change. And some of them, in high school, I was part of a literary group. In this literary group, we were responsible for reading submissions and rating them 0 or 1 to 10. I decided I would put one of my stories into this slush fund. I get it, I'm like the 8th person out of 10 or 9 that were reading this, and I get 2s, 2, 3, 2. I was crushed. I didn't write any until my first book. I didn't write again, not anything of note. So I have a real issue with criticism, and so I pay Stephen to see a lot of that criticism and fix it. So that's just...
Who paid to boost you to go?
No one.
I feel like you can afford that.
How did you find it?
I found everybody as fans. David, which military guy that's in Australia, offered, because I was being honest in my author notes going, I don't know what to do, but I can't, editors, at least the ones that I'm familiar with, so forgive me editors, I apologize. Usually you have to get on their schedule, they're busy, the good ones are, and then it takes them a week or 2 to get done. I'm already on the next book. I'm pushing one a month. I can't do that, so by definition I had to figure out what to do and how to get the quality up. And so, actually, it's funny. It's like, wow, I found a mistake. Really? That's what you're going to gripe about? A mistake? You should have been back with me in November.
So what do you write about, 4 or 5 hours a day?
Time to go. Okay.
You're just getting started.
Oh, I'm here for however long you want. So, I'm good. But if you need to get up and leave, please. You know, you're not going to offend me, probably.
You write how many hours a day?
Oh, I can do about 2,500 an hour if I'm writing hard. I've done some audio Dragon dictation, which if I'm doing conversations, I can rip through Dragon really fast. If I'm doing descriptive stuff, I can't seem to do Dragon as well. So I will typically write about 2 weeks to get that 70,000 words out. And usually the last couple of days, it's 8 to 9 hours a day because I'm like, I'm gonna finish.
So do you have somebody transcribe the audio? Is that how that-
No, Dragon Dictate. Yeah, the software will do. Oh, Dragon Dictate.
Software for Nuance.
Yeah, Nuance, Dragon software. You can speak and it will type, mostly. It might type badly.
You have to train it.
Yeah, you do have to train it. So it might be something like this, open quotes. I don't know what you're really talking about, Bethany Ann, comma, close quotes, said John, period, new paragraph. It sounds dorky, but you get used to it pretty quick. And what?
Voicemails sound like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but Dragon Dictate is something that I've used in the past, and I'm not sure if I'm sleeping bad or I'm typing too much, but there's an issue with these 2 fingers now, and I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to get back to Dragon Dictate. So.
Look up hand exercises for the wrist.
Okay.
Wrist component. That's a sign what's happening is you've got a nerve crossing over.
Oh,
I have the same
excellent.
problem. I've got a guy I'm working with training me to do things to my hands to avoid carpal syndrome, which apparently that's the sign.
That was not helpful.
What that means is there's a way to reverse that.
Yeah, okay.
But it is a sign of something that you do need to address.
Okay. Yeah, what your name?
Shane.
Shane. What Shane was telling me was because of my fingers and everything, he's like, that's a sign of carpal tunnel syndrome. And I'm like, that's A, not helpful, and B, my wife is back there. She's going to be all over that.
Working with a professional.
Yeah.
ready to-
I'll be doing it now. Thank you. What is my Amazon pricing strategy? $2.99 first book because I want to make it a little bit less. but hopefully they see that every book thereafter is $3.99. I do first release at 99 cents, and the reason I do that once again is because I said an apology in my author note. So there's a quick question on Audible or audio. And I've got fans that are asking me for audio, and I tell you what, one of the biggest things that was really cool is Tantor and Podium have both reached out to me. The problem is that both of them, and it's probably, I'm sure, the industry, they're going to offer you 7%. Now, Podium will actually do something that's a little bit cooler, but when you're used to making 70% and their idea of an advance is what you're doing in a day, it tends to make you think, I can do this. Now, that's probably a mistake at one point too, but the other issue is I've got 21 books. Generally speaking, it's going to cost between $200 and $400 per production hour. You can you can calculate a production hour of audio as 9,000 words. So if you got a 90,000 word book, approximately 10 hours. It's actually a little bit more than that depending on the person speaking. At $400 an hour, my books are going to cost me $3,600 a pop to get that 20%. At 21 books, I'm talking $70,000 to do 21. So that's a big one.
Yeah, because the company that I'm with, they send other stuff to Poland and have somebody have like the computer, well, kind of like their version of Siri read it. And so my book was 75,000 words, and they charged me $300 for that. But I was horribly disappointed in the quality.
Yes.
Of it.
And audio will reject it anyway.
Well, Amazon took it. It's on there. I mean, it's up, but I don't really like it because it sounds very mechanical. Which if someone was deaf or had some other problem with reading, it's good enough. But I'm wondering if next on the other ones, if I even want to mess with that or not, because like you said, the real good readers are going to be $400 an hour. So
The highest level will be $400 an hour. You can make ACX agreements where they put in effort, you put in effort. You might have to pay $100 spiff. So I could get the 9 hours for $900, but now I'm giving up 20%. And there's still an effort of doing everything. So I would love, to be with Podium would be fantastic, right? But I'm just not sure if that's something that I'm going to be able to do from just a monetary standpoint. Because it's a 7-year commitment, and for me personally, at the pace that I'm selling, it's really hypothetically possible that I could be giving up 6 figures to do that. So.
Yeah, because I'm kind of thinking I may not do that on the next.
Let's do one more and then we'll say people can come up and talk to you.
Okay. Or did that one? Amazon forum. For those, how do I interact with your fans? I do it on the Amazon forum on your author page. Set up your author page, go to the Amazon forum underneath. I'll create some occasional, and some fans will get involved as well. When they love you, they will start reaching out to you, and then I do Facebook a lot. How do you explain editing with your rapid turnaround time? There's actually a podcast on my rapid editing, although it changes quite a bit. What Matt has just told me is shut up and answer questions. Answer questions, just come on up and ask me.
Yeah, if you guys want to stick around, Michael and I will be here for a long time. I think he might be here longer than I have, looking at this stack of questions. But yeah, come up and talk to us afterwards. We'll be here for at least another hour. Michael might close down the bar though. But thank you for coming. It was really great to have you.
Thank you.